So I'll tell you a quick story. I was at a customary court one time, and there was a proceeding that was supposed to happen, and I was there. The defendants, all of those people were there, and the lawyers were actually present at the place as well. But the person that was going to be, I think that was sued at the time, was not physically present. I think the person was in the US, and they needed to conduct that proceedings in Nigeria. So the person had to join online. But one thing happened that day. Of course, network issues came up and a lot of things. But I think one of the issues was that the judge particularly said she does not like virtual proceedings because of the errors that might come from that. But a lot of that has happened in the country. But it seems to be like a way forward for us in the country now, after the president has recently, wrote to the Senate yesterday seeking about approval for 110 justices for appeal court and 90 for federal high court. And in fact, he even named Oyewole to be confirmed as justice of the Supreme Court. That is about what the president said yesterday. But that's one of the things we're going to be highlighting on this particular segment of newspaper headlines and analysis, where we check into the prints, the high point, the low point of the stories, and then the stories are making the rounds across the country, Nigeria. That is of interest. But of course, I'll get into the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning, maybe to talk about the court issues, particularly virtual proceedings in the country. Seems like, yes, eureka moment for some persons. Maybe court will now need to provide those facilities, so I mean those equipment as well, to live stream a court proceeding. I mean, this is a development. This is being done in several countries of the world. Developed nations of the world have adopted this as a thing to do, and they are not even scared. They are not aversive to this because they feel this is the right way. What about people who are currently somewhere remotely, maybe hospitals, or some people that are not even on the front scene, that cannot come physically to the courts? How do they manage? But yes, that's about it on that story. Proposes electronic visual transmission of court proceedings in amendment bill. That is the story on Nigerian Tribune newspaper. That is the biggest caption this morning, and that story says Tinubu seeks 110 justices for appeal court, 90 for federal high court. Seems like a good one. Proposes electronic virtual transmission of court proceedings and amendments be want to Oyewole confirmed as justice of the Supreme Court. That story is on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning. I'll go to the top corner, the left hand side of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, and that's talking about the by-election. Now, Fubara refutes allegation of supporting the ADC candidate. That's on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. But you know about this story. You know about the Fubara, Wike, Martins and Maiwule saga, and of course now the ADC is in question. But yes, we'll keep tabs on this and see where this story would lead us to. But now, moving on from that to talk economics now. CBN rejects 4.9 trillion naira OMO bid to tighten liquidity, stabilize yields, and that's talking commerce, economics, and finance today. But moving on from that particular one as well, LCC laments as national grid collapses again, second time this year. So just yesterday, the reports came out that yes, yet again after 4 days, another national grid collapse happened in the country, Nigeria. But yes, according to reports by the operators, they said all hands were on deck at the time to ensure they brought it back to work. And of course, yes, I think we'll give it to them because this administration has done quite a lot, especially with the power grid collapse in recent times. They've done so well to say it doesn't collapse as often, and sometimes when it does, they find a way to manage it and repair it as fast as possible. But there's no issue with a collapse. There's no issue with an issue in the country. The only thing we should work on is conflict resolution. How can we better this situation? How can we tackle it? And I think that's one thing to do, right, if you're in government or you're in any position that requires to serve people, because it's actually a service. But moving on from that story, for one of time, there are many other stories saying pick me, but of course I will still pick some on the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Tinubu stumbles in Turkey, no cause for alarm as presidency came. Oh yeah, that's no big deal. Don't make a fuss out of this. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. It's no big deal, so calm down. Explains he stepped on the metal on the floor, lost his balance briefly as he holds talks with President Erdogan. We hope this will be something that will yield for the country, Nigeria, because if the president had to sleep on that, then he has to produce something for us. We don't want our president to be sleeping. And that's one of the things we think, and we hope that, yes, the bilateral relations between Nigeria and Turkey would make sense and would benefit the country at large. Moving on from that as well, protest rocks Onitsha over main market shutdown. Yes, that was in the news yesterday, and we brought it out, and it's still making the rounds as well in the country about Onitsha markets. Of course, the governor Soludo came out to say, and then he decried the whole market people thing, and then they came out to protest as well. But that's the story in Onitsha. But we'll still keep fingers crossed on that and see what becomes of that. I'll flip the pages now from Nigerian Tribune now to New Telegraph newspaper. What do we have on that print particularly? How big is the caption? How catchy is the caption? Yes, as national grid collapses second time. That's the big story on the New Telegraph newspaper this morning. In 4 days, LCCI says its new economic emergency. That is that report right there. As national grid collapses second time in 4 days, LCCI says it's now economic emergency. Perhaps it's something to fix. Perhaps it's not something to keep looking at, keep hoping. We should do something about it. Maybe that's what the LCCI is saying this morning. I think it's a good way to go for the country. Setting the record straight on the disqualification of Nestor's lawyer. That's another story right there. But yes, of course, politicians have hijacked FCT strike. That's some week. The minister of the FCT has come out to say a slamming court for ignoring ministers' criminal violations. That's NLC. Of course, slamming court for ignoring Wike's criminal violations. That's allegedly, like they would say. Of course, that story is about the FCTA protest, the workers' protest in the FCT. And then, yes, some Wike, and some are linking it again to Simonalayi Fubara and how the Minister of the State has been, Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, has been moving from one local government in Rivers State to another. But yes, that's about that. Moving on from that. Tinubu asks Senate to amend Federal High Courts Act, raise justices to 90. That's how Telegraph brought out the story this morning. And court rejects Nnamdi Kanu's request for transfer from Sokoto prison. IPOB, I think I can't say this clearly, but if exactly that's the story. Court rejecting Nnamdi Kanu's request for transfer from Sokoto prison. That is also a story right there. Of course, we brought it also in the news that one thing led to the other. But yes, it was called, that particular was called for lack of is it merit or of a moral standard to stand in court. But yes, that's the issue, and we'll keep tabs on that as well. We have received over 3.7 human rights violation complaints in 2025, and that's coming from NHRC. It says most linked to insecurity, poverty, governance or governance deficits. That is also something to see right there. Now moving on from the Telegraph newspaper to Leadership newspaper. And what do we have on Leadership newspaper this morning? Dear Zani is on the front page. You might want to see, you might want to check that out this morning. Dear Zani received 100,000 pounds in cash as bribe. That's the story, right? That's from a UK prosecutor about Alison Diezani Madueke. Of course, in that suit. We'll move on from that particular issue to see federal government raises 501 billion naira bond, settles for the 121.42 billion naira power sector debts. That is also a good one for the country, Nigeria. And Kuka has said something to chair leadership conference. Of course, that's also for read. If you want to get into that page, page 7 is where to catch up on that story this morning. NDLEA unveils crop substitution project for illicit cannabis and farmers. Of course, that story is on page 21 about NDLEA. I think there's been so many arrests and rearrests recently. We've seen the case where a woman was actually apprehended by the NDA officers, and quite a number of persons in recent times. It seems the spike in the use of drugs and abuse of substance has been on the hike in the country recently, and it's something that is a far cry from what we should have in the country. But yes, that's about that on the NDLEA issue. We keep that as well on that and many more. Central Bank grants 2-month form M relief to importers. Form M relief form is a form for importers, and of course CBN has granted a 2-month grant, which is a good one, right, for business owners who are in that line of profession. But yes, moving on from that, presidency dismisses concerns over Tinubu's stumble in Turkey. That is that story. And yes, another one says We will prioritize Electoral Act, Constitution Amendment, 2026 budget, and that's coming from the reps. There's been a conversation that shortly before the Senate resumed plenary yesterday that it was going to be on top of their list constitutional amendment. Others have said, this is long overdue. This is something we should have in the country. In fact, we've taken it too long to start. I mean, so if we are starting now, it's never too late. Like they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And I think that's what the reps are saying this morning, to say yes, they're going back to constitutional reform, but not just that. They also said they would prioritize Electoral Act, constitutional amendment, and 2026 budget as well. We'll keep tabs on that to see what the House will really bring out, or which will top their list, or which will be on the spotlight for the National Assembly as well as the House of Reps in the country, Nigeria. Now, Article B6, free and fair polls as Aregbesola dismisses governor's defections. That is also on leadership newspaper, the down corner. You see the story, Atiku Obi seek free and fair polls as Aregbesola dismisses governor's defections. That is the story. Meanwhile, in Kano State, Kwakwanso is also right there, as you can see on your print. It says Kwakwanso begins restructuring Kwakwasiya movement after Yusuf's exit. So maybe the question will be, what is Kwakwansiya movement about this time around? Or perhaps what is Kwakwanso about this time around? Yesterday, it was also in the news that the son of Kwakwanso had to, he came out to say he's not, he wants to resign his appointment as the Commissioner for Youth in Kano State. And that brought about a lot of questions, agitations, speculations, and all of that to say, you're fighting for your dad. I mean, this is a position you should just continue to do. But I think one of the things that he made mention of in the statement was that he had no feud, no personal vendetta, no personal ill blood or bad blood between himself and Abba Kabir Yusuf, the Kano State governor. But I think he mentioned the fact that he would not continue with an administration that has lost track of the ideology that brought it in. What is the ideology? Maybe questions should be asked, really. If you say ideology, what do you mean ideology? Is it solidarity? Is it godfatherism? What exactly is the ideology behind the NNPP that you think the governor of the state, Abba Kabir Yusuf, has violated for you to say you are not serving the country again? I think this is, something for this, because there's been that issue about his defection, and this is not the first time we've heard about this. We've seen an NNPP chairman, we've seen their spokesperson as well come out to say, you know what, as of now, I think that was last week, they said they've not received any official notification from Abba Kabir Yusuf of his defection. But after that, something happened, and that was the visit to the president. The president and Abba Kabir Yusuf had a meeting, and it was all about that. So there were speculations that, oh yeah, what could have happened? But not to forget, the governor of Oyo State was also, he gave a visit to the president, and some were saying that maybe he's also looking for the same. Perhaps a way to say, come in and let's get you something more. But yes, the governor came out to say that what they had, Governor Makinde, that what they had at the table of discourse on that particular visit was about transforming the nation and progress and development across regions, and nothing about politics. But really, can it be without politics? Can you talk to politicians without politics? Anyway, maybe that's his claims. But yes, Abba Kabir Yusuf has moved from the NNPP to the APC, and it seems like a good one for the APC, making 29 governors currently in the APC. Some have alleged that this is a one-party state system. Some have said that, if the center is doing well, why not just join them? For the better good of the community, maybe, or for the states in general. Others are saying that, it's just political maneuvering, that is nothing about what the government or administration is doing so well, but it's about the people who want power, who want immunity. But that's in clause. But yes, allegedly, like they would say. But that is that story. Kwakwanso has come back to the table to say, let's go back to the drawing table and let's drive out what we should have for the Kwakwansiya movement that brought in a governor, that brought in many state lawmakers and even federal lawmakers as well in that region. But we understand why Kano is also on the table of discourse. Very important. Kano is very important to everybody, to any political party, because of the numbers. So if you are a person who consider numbers, like some would say that politics is a game of numbers. If you consider a number to be a thing, then you might consider Kano to be place to go. 2023 elections, Kano produced about 1.74 million votes, in the state alone. And that surpasses every other. The year before, I mean, the election before, that was in 2019, it produced about 1.96. So you can imagine if you have someone producing millions, why would you not get it? But yes, Kwakansia movement is starting something. That's the most important story right now. What is Kwakanso starting again with the Kwakansia movement? So what exactly are they trying to do, and how can this be seen moving forward? Is it for the ANPP, or is there going to be a merger between the NNPP, I meant to say, and another party? All of that, we'll keep our fingers crossed on and see what becomes of that. But yes, very interesting. Come 2027, so many debates, conversations are really spiking, everybody talking about one thing or the other, but it's something to really check out. And of course, Nigerians will also hold our leaders accountable. I mean, don't just go to a party because you want to go. Go because a party has an ideology that can help the people. Because at the end of the day, we keep saying, it's all about the people. It's nothing about you. I mean, I don't know why we don't think this way, because the best you have is just a few years. At best, say 120 years, and then you're gone. Someone else comes in. I mean, so what do you want to say that you did? What do you want to be said of you after you've left office? And this is a call to our politicians and our political leaders. It's not just see leadership as a political, ground to say, I just want the crowd, I just want the numbers, I just want to win. Win to do what? It's service, and that's what we call you to say. Oh, we speak truth to power. You should ensure that beyond the political drive, beyond the all of this, the impression of, yes, you want to make a name for yourself, kindly help the people that are suffering too, and that's very important. I'll move on from the leadership newspaper now to see what the Punch newspaper is saying this morning. Right on the Punch newspaper, very punchy this morning, is the front page of the Punch newspaper. You want to know what that says? It says investigation uncovers Colonel who plotted Tinubu's ouster. That is that. Interim report reviews military officers targeted president, vice president, ministers, and key installations. Arrests ongoing. So the arrest is in plural, and that's one of the most important things in this story. The arrest is not just for one person, not for two, not for three. The arrest is ongoing. So they've arrested. We got wind of one information that about 16 of top leaders in the military have been apprehended and has been court-martialed as we speak. And now there seems to be another story, a development that's, yes, more to come. So they are still picking up people, arresting people. We hope justice is really done to that issue, because we've been saying this too, that what becomes of people who plot coups and never come to bear? What about, because the people who actually plot or plan coup and then it happens, those people get to get maybe national honors someday. They become presidents even in the country. What about the ones, so there's a court-martial process for the ones that did not succeed. The ones that succeed, you just pamper them, because they have also put in place administrations and structures that will ensure that they don't get caught in the web long after they have served the country. But yes, if it's all about service, why take it by force? I mean, I don't want to stress that, but yes, let's not be the dead horse on that issue. But it's very important that our leaders understand these things, that if it's about service, it should be a free will thing. It should not be a do or die affair. Because if you want to kill everybody, drive everybody just to become a president or a governor at the expense of people's lives, I mean, so what then are you supposed to serve? The dead people? Yeah, moving on from that now. Presidency downplays Tinubu's tumble, says Turkey visits on course. That we've said, and that we keep saying as much as we have it in the newsprint this morning. This goes, yes, that's the story also on the Punch newspaper this morning. You can see the face of Adelabu Adebayo, the power minister, right there. This goes, blame low generation as grid collapses third time. And that's like the story on the Punch newspaper. This goes are blaming low generation as grid is yet collapsing again. There was just a few days ago, Discos came out to say that what Adebayo Adelabu said on behalf of the government, that prepaid meters should be free, especially the ones they've collected through World Bank loans should be free for the average Nigerian. And then they said even the installation, how can you say that? Because we are going to be at the end of that. We are going to be receiving that, that we are going to be the ones paying for installation, and we cannot do that. So they said Discos decried what the federal government came out to say, especially about the power ministry. They said that yes, this new prepaid meter that we have is actually for free for regardless of the band you belong to. The installation has to come for free, and this guy said no. This is not going to work for us. We cannot be incurring the cost on ourselves. Why wouldn't the presidency take responsibility? So there seems to be a shifting of responsibilities. You take this, is not mine. You collect it back and all that, back and forth. But yes, this court is also lamenting that why we keep having this issue that we should have called an emergency for is because there is low grid power generation, and that's exactly one of the things they said is contributory to this time and again grid collapse in the country. But yes, moving on to that story of Tinubu proposing 110 courts of appeal justices, how does this reflect on an average person? Well, we've also said this is important because if you consider how many cases are still outstanding in the country, I think I did a bit of research and I saw that, of course, there are criminal cases about running into about 500 thereabouts in the country that are still pending. They've not even sat over it. Why? For lack of judges, for lack of facilities, for lack of a lot of institutional deformities and those things that should have been in place, and that's why they could not have those proceedings in those courts. But yes, it seems like the president is moving for more. Let's have more so we can have all of the cases that are still pending, the cases that are still awaiting hearing. We should have to hear them. Let's hear them and see what we have from those particular court proceedings. Now, moving on from that as well, to still check what the Punch is saying in terms of some of the things that we're checking now. Wike threatens workers as court orders strike suspension. Yes, that is also something to check out in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Wike is threatening workers as court orders strike suspension. That is also a story. Of course, we also understand that Yesom Wike has gone with the president to Turkey. So just so you're looking for Yesom Wike, his whereabouts is is actually known to everybody. Now, how I lost 3-week-old daughter to Makoko demolition. That's coming from a carpenter. You've seen that story in recent times about Lagos State, the Makoko incident. Some will saying that some persons, maybe NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and foreign partners are trying to use Makoko for their own personal gains. And on top of that, some have said that Makoko, yes, has its use in terms of maybe taking or maybe I don't know how best to put that, but yes, that they are polluting the waterways and all that, and there are a lot of things about that. But yes, the people are saying that what the government did is not actually good, because some of them claim to have lived there for over 10 years, 15 years, and you can imagine you growing up in the place and then it has to be taken away. I mean, that's not bad enough, except that there's nowhere to go. If you say go away from Makoko, where should people go? Lagos is just about 3,300 and something kilometers square, and it's like, yes, there's still a lot to do. We're trying to get more lands, trying to get more, take water away and then put land on it and a lot of that. But there's still that conversation. We hope the best will come out for the people as well as for the government of Lagos State, while we keep tabs on these and many other stories. So Showere's trial is also on the Punch newspaper, and it says court admits on mockery clip calling Tinubu drug lord. That is also something to check out this morning. So Showere did not just call that, he also called a name that I will not mention right here, defamatory speech against the president. So that's why there's been a court precedent involving Showere as we speak. But there's another one that they've gotten a clip that he said President Tinubu is a drug kingpin, a drug lord. But yes, that is for the court to decide on, and we'll keep tabs on this as well as we keep tabs on many other stories. Now, Daily Independent newspaper has another story in politics, and it says Atiku, Aregbesola, and David Mark say Tinubu's admin worst in decades. Atiku, Aregbesola, Mark says Tinubu's admin worst in decades. Governors can't sway elections, Aregbesola assures. I was almost assassinated because of loyalty, and that's coming from Atiku, the former vice presidential candidate in the country. NGF didn't champion doctrine of necessity, and that's coming from David Mark as well. Yes, so many things to talk about this issue. But yes, moving on from that for want of time, Resume work or face sanctions. We get all striking FCC workers. That's also the story. Now, on power crisis, seems the federal government has done something worth reeling out this morning. Federal government raises 501 billion naira bond to clear debt burden. That is also something to check out this morning. Another story says experts flag climate smart farming, others as key to food security. Climate smart farming is something that many nations are already adopting, but I think it's a good one for Nigeria to also adopt this particular move, because some have also said that, climate change does not exist, but you only need to ask yourself, perhaps ask the farmers, because they get, they are very close to that situation, so they can tell you what an average farmer experiences 5 years ago is not the same he experiences right now, because of changing times, changing weather conditions, and a lot of that. And that's like a good one to say. Experts are flagging climate smart farming and others as key to food security. Like they say, once food has been resolved, food crisis has been resolved, then every other thing is almost as good as done. But yes, that's about that on agriculture, on food security in the country, Nigeria. Tinubu in stable condition after fall in Turkey. That's coming from the presidency, like we've also laid emphasis on today. Now, moving on to Daily Sun newspaper and see what the Daily Sun is saying this morning. The Daily Sun says, court strikes out Kanu's motion seeking transfer from Sokoto prison. That is a big story right there. Atiku Abubakar knock Tinubu. Is government worse than military dictatorship? That's coming from the former vice president, Atiku, saying Tinubu's government is worse than military dictatorship. Governors can't save president. APC in 2027. That's coming from an ex-Osun governor, also saying that as well as Aregbesola, yes, that government or governors, even having 29 governors is not enough to win 2027 elections as well, and a lot more about that. And that's about it on that story. But yes, of course, there are many other stories, but one story that is to come right now is the big story. And we'll check what's on the big story today. Something very important with Oluwayemi Adelakun. That will be shortly after this break. Join us again.